Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another live stream here in the channel. There is way too many people in this live stream for me to welcome individually. Might be one of the records for the most people we had waiting in a live stream for me to start so far this year. So appreciate everybody tuning in thus far. Hopefully you're all having a fantastic, well, what day is it? Wednesday? I think it's a Wednesday. Hopefully you're having a great Wednesday so far. And yeah, welcome everyone in the live stream. Welcome everyone who's chatting. Welcome everyone who's not chatting. Glad to see you all in here for another live stream. And let's go right ahead and get into this. So we're under a level 1 out of 5 for severe weather today. Not really much to talk about in regards to today's severe weather threat. You know, we might mention it here and there, but we're not going to really talk a whole lot about today's risk with it being such a low-end day. But we do actually have, you see that marginal back up there in Indiana and Ohio. We've actually had quite a few severe storms back up here for hail and damaging winds, pretty low end, but a little unexpected event there because, you know, it's just a marginal risk. You're not expecting much. This easily could have verified as a slight risk for hail out here in Ohio. Pretty notable severe weather threat happening out there, but thankfully not significant, just a lot of normal severe thunderstorms. But this live stream, we're going to be focusing on all the main days for severe weather. We've got Thursday, which is tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, as well as going into the middle of next week, all to talk about for the potential of severe weather. Quite a few underperformance things. Nothing looks great, in my opinion, outside of maybe Monday. Monday is the day that I've been watching the most. If you saw earlier today, I did a post about it on Twitter. Monday is really the only day that I'm interested in for the potential of a really notable tornado outbreak and something that could be a huge problem. But there's multiple days here where we're likely going to see widespread severe weather and a few tornadoes. But if we're talking about major type criteria, like moderate risk criteria, to be honest with you, only Monday really has my attention for that type of criteria, that type of issue. So, yeah, for tomorrow, we have Thursday for severe weather potential here. That's tomorrow. We've got a 5% significant risk for tornadoes today across Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, even into Oklahoma. There is the only tornado risk that I'm really interested in for tomorrow. There's a conditional risk for a strong tornado and a brief tornado or two right as storms fire along that cold front. And then there's a triple point with a cold front dry line and our warm front and a low pressure back out here in Oklahoma. And that is a little bit more interesting to me. I would be watching that tomorrow probably the most in southern Kansas. But really, tomorrow doesn't look like a big tornado day to me, especially if we don't see anything fire along that dry line in Oklahoma. Regardless, though, damaging winds will be a problem tomorrow. Widespread 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts, gusts upwards of 75 miles per hour possible, and then large hail upwards of 2.5, 2.75 inches in diameter, being a possibility here in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Iowa. So definitely hail being a big problem, but damaging winds is the biggest threat. Large hail following that, and then tornadoes wouldn't rule out a few weak, brief tornadoes and a conditional strong tornado threat in Kansas and a conditional, very conditional strong tornado threat in Oklahoma, depending on if anything fires. Then we move on into Friday, which, as I described in my video, is kind of like an off day. You know, we're still going to see severe weather, still likely pretty widespread damaging winds, pretty widespread large hail, maybe isolated very large hail upwards of 2.5 inches in diameter, and maybe wind gusts upwards of 70, 75 miles per hour. But main threat here, widespread 50 to 65 mile an hour wind gusts. Gusts could approach 70 to 75. Widespread 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter hail. Some hailstones up to 2.5 inches in diameter. And a few tornadoes possible here on Friday. The only real tornado threat I see on Friday at the moment is where that instability may be the greatest, paired with your lower level jet stream back out here across Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Just like I pointed out in the video yesterday, the kind of the Arklatex area, the Texarkana area here, right in southwest Arkansas, southeastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, northwestern Louisiana. That's kind of the main area to watch here for tomorrow, or not tomorrow, for Friday. Then we move into Saturday, which is a little bit more of a controversial outlook. The Storm Prediction Center is on their own. They're on their own. You know, they're way out here. They're gone. Model guidance is over here. You CSU over here, NSSL over here, and you got the SPC. They're off the wall over here. They are far out, really, really out on a limb with this SPC outlook here. You see that? Look at that nice little spin there. So not a lot of confidence in this day. I am absolutely shocked that they pulled a 30% enhanced risk out here for Kansas and Oklahoma. However, when you kind of look at the, you know, we always say like look more in depth into things, but when you kind of step back and you look at just the pattern recognition, kind of taking away the instability, not looking much at that wind shear, kind of, you know, take away the things that you normally look at, and you take a step back and look at just the jet stream, you kind of do see, you know, Saturday actually could be an enhanced worthy event if you just look at that jet stream. And that jet stream could actually end up bringing an MCS, a damaging wind squall line here across Kansas and Oklahoma. So the enhanced risk is kind of like they're trying to just predict which way models are going to lean here, really, because right now models are not very much on favor with this criteria being needed at this point. But you could see if you look at just like your 500 millibar wind speeds here for Saturday, you know, you have this shortwave trough that is fast moving, a very weak shortwave trough that is fast moving on kind of the northeast side of a very, very weak low pressure. And you can really see that from the 250 millibar wind speeds here. You've got some good northwesterly flow here at the lower level, and that could allow for a very, very quick hitting damaging wind event across Oklahoma and Kansas. So like I said, when you kind of ignore the instability and kind of ignore the wind shear and the supercell composite and all this stuff, and you step back to just looking at the 500 millibar and the 250 millibar wind speeds, you can kind of see where that greatest wind threat may actually occur. So the SPC, like I said, out on a limb here on where they have that enhanced risk placed. We'll see if it pays off. There's a chance that it doesn't pay off and, you know, Saturday ends up being not that big of a day for severe weather. And then there's a chance we see a full-on MCS or QLCS push through Kansas and Oklahoma. So we'll see which way it leans in a bit. Like I said, shocked they pulled that 30% because I don't have nearly as much confidence as what they do here for severe weather on Saturday. Big change on their outlook too. The outlook yesterday, I believe, only included like southeast Oklahoma, northwest Texas, and western Arkansas, as well as southeastern Oklahoma. And then today it includes this huge area with 30%. So big change on that Saturday outlook from the Storm Prediction Center here. And like I said, it's kind of 50-50 which way it pays off here. We'll just see. Regardless, we're going to be monitoring it. Make sure you're hyper weather aware if you're in this yellow and orange area as we go into Saturday. And then Sunday, this is our first opportunity for a big time tornado threat where we could be talking about multiple strong tornadoes possible. However, there is very minimal signal on the dry line initiating out here in Oklahoma and Kansas. Now, global models do a pretty rough job at actually initiating any type of convection off a dry line, but there's like pretty much no models from what I've seen. There's no models and no ensembles being the biggest thing there, that actually fire off the dry line. So it's not just your deterministics, but it's also multiple ensemble members inside of different ensemble groups. And most of them show little to no signal of a dry line initiating here in Kansas and Oklahoma. So I'm very much skeptical about Sunday. If it fires, I mean, this is kind of like that high risk we saw in 2024, where if stuff fires and stays discrete, we're talking about an intense to violent tornado threat. But if nothing fires, it's a full-on bust. So big time boom or bust scenarios here for Sunday. It could go either way. So Sunday, definitely want to be weather aware. We'll go more in depth here in just a second, but definitely this has big time boomer bust Oklahoma classic written all over it right here. So could go either way. Right now, I'm split on that as well. But again, I do want to reiterate, Saturday, boomer bust for Saturday. Either way, Saturday's main threat should be damaging winds. But on Sunday, the boomer bust would actually be, a boom would be a big time tornado threat, as opposed to Saturday would be a big time wind threat. Then we move into Monday, which ironically, in my opinion, is the highest end day and actually has fairly low probabilities by the Storm Prediction Center here. They still have, adjusting my microphone here because I'm getting in the reds, they have a slight risk for severe weather, which is the same slight risk that we have for Friday's threat here. You could see we have a slight risk for Friday and we have a slight risk here for Monday. So we don't have an enhanced risk like here on Saturday or Sunday. It is just a slight risk for severe weather, which is definitely something that you want to be keeping an eye on for sure. But I quite disagree with this, honestly. I think this is the day that has by far the highest potential. Actually, hold on. I think, I think this has the highest potential. I wanted to get a sounding really quick on Sunday just to see, but I think this day has higher potential than Sunday. They're very close. They're very neck and neck here. But I think that the SPC is going to extend this slight risk further off to the north and even into Illinois and Indiana here even further. And they may even push this off the tiniest bit more to the east. And then we should, I don't know why we don't, we should already have a big, fat, enhanced risk in place across these areas in here, from like eastern Arkansas, eastern Missouri, maybe even further west than that. Like right in here should all be an enhanced risk for severe weather, in my opinion. I think we are looking at the potential for a very notable tornado event being possible across Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, and Missouri as we go into day 6, which is going to be Monday. And then Tuesday, we don't have a slight risk for severe weather. There's a chance we get a slight risk out here across the southern plains. There's a chance we get a slight risk down here in Dixie Alley. And then there's a chance we get a slight risk here in the mid-Atlantic. Really, any of those areas could get under a slight risk, and I'll show you why right now. If we just pull this all the way out to Tuesday, there's going to be this large belt of instability stretching from Pennsylvania all the way down into Texas. And really, anywhere inside of that belt of instability, we could see an upgrade to a slight risk for severe weather. I think the most likely area right now is Texas. I pointed that out briefly in my video yesterday because I didn't look at Tuesday until I started recording. But I think the best chance for a slight risk is probably back out here into Texas as we go into Tuesday. If we take a look at the Canadian model run, the Canadian model run kind of also hints towards Texas being the best threat, maybe a little bit further off to the southeast though. And then the Euro model run here, that definitely hints towards Texas and Oklahoma being the biggest threat. So I think we will see a slight risk for severe weather at some point on Tuesday. Not 100% sure where. And then we go into Wednesday here, April 29th. And that is another day where we will probably have the risk for severe weather. A little bit more uncertain on that. but that will probably be somewhere either in Texas, depends on our instability. You could see the Canadian has Texas being the main risk on Tuesday, and then probably Texas again on Wednesday, maybe even back into the Mid-Atlantic, whereas the Euro and the GFS both kind of agree that the Southern Great Plains, the Southern Plains overall, will be the biggest threat going into Wednesday. So Wednesday, somewhere probably around Oklahoma and Texas will be the best threat for severe weather. And then we move into Wednesday, or not Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday, April 30th, which I don't think the new model run is out that far. The new model run is just getting into that time frame. This day has a lot of talk about it already. One thing I will say is using your ensemble here. This is your GFS ensemble. You could see Texas on Tuesday, Texas and Oklahoma on Wednesday, and then Thursday. There's not a lot of confidence. You only have a few little yellows appearing here on your ensemble. I think severe weather is likely as we go into Wednesday as well, mid next week. But we are talking about exactly a week out from today, and there's really not a whole lot to go in depth about there. Severe weather is definitely a very real possibility, but it's very far out. It is very, very far out. But I do think Wednesday and Thursday both have the potential for good severe weather days, especially Thursday, mid to late next week. As you can see from the 12Z GFS model run here, huge belt of flow across a giant portion of the southeastern, south central U.S. for Thursday. All right, now let's go through your 500 millibar wind speeds here day by day. Wednesday, that's today, just some isolated severe weather possible up here in the northern and maybe into the central U.S. That little area of flow across Ohio is all you needed for some severe storms, which was quite a surprise today. Tomorrow, that's Thursday, we continue to see this belt of flow push off to the northeast here, your trough continuing to turn very much negatively tilted, and at this point, it's practically pointing due east. But this is going to be the guy that really initiates severe weather tomorrow. That shortwave right in there. Between these two areas on 250 millibar wind speeds, you're going to have a belt of flow up here that helps initiate thunderstorms in Kansas and Iowa. And then a belt of flow down here that is also going to help initiate storms down here into Kansas and Oklahoma. And where those two split, that is where we have a big question mark on if anything will fire in that dry line and kind of central to the border of northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas. So very high uncertainty there on if storms will actually fire. You could see that little triple point area would be right in here on the GFS 12Z run, the GFS 18Z, very similar spot. And let's see if anything initiates. You can see nothing initiates there. You've got some prefrontal convection in front on the GFS, but nothing notable initiates in that area until the greatest forcing from your cold front from this trough up here ends up eventually initiating storms in Oklahoma on the tail end of that cold front. So, yeah, also on the warm front too, because you've got a low pressure here. So that kind of creates a cold front, warm front connecting there. So not impressed by tomorrow's setup. Like I said, the greatest tornado threat, conditional strong tornado threat up in this area, mainly damaging winds being the biggest problem. Some large hail can't be ruled out as those storms first fire. And then a very, very conditional, but pretty dang high ceiling threat down in here where we could, if storms fire, even see an intense tornado threat if a storm fires tomorrow just around 5 o'clock or so before that capping could become a problem. But if that doesn't happen, tomorrow's going to be a big wind day, and before storms fire, big time hail, and then storms start to grow upscale, big time damaging winds, brief spin up tornado threat, isolated, brief strong tornado threat, but overall not a whole lot tornado-wise should happen tomorrow if those storms don't fire in southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma. Friday, that's your off day. Like I said, it just continues to downtrend for Friday. It looks less and less impressive with every run that comes in. I mean, just wherever the lower level jet could be greatest as we go into the very late evening hours, that's going to be your only small opportunity for a brief tornado or two being possible. But overall, very, very minimal tornado threat here for Friday. It might barely hit 5% tornado criteria for Friday, but Friday, Not an impressive tornado day at all. In fact, probably the least impressive tornado day out of this entire sequence of severe weather that we'll be dealing with for this week into early next week. But still, widespread damaging winds across much of this region will be possible. Large hail will mainly be possible in that area of greatest instability down in here. And then, tornado threat could happen across same area, the Arklatex area, Texarkana region, if that lower level jet starts to increase as we go into the evening hours. Then Saturday rolls around, which I'm curious actually looks maybe a little bit better on this run. Maybe the slightest bit better. Yeah, a little bit more instability further to the north into Kansas. However, your Cape did downtrend just a little bit. So not any like huge changes there. Not really any big uptrends or downtrends, just a little shift in your trough as a whole. Like I said, Friday, that's probably going to be a bit of a surprise. This is your 18Z GFS, or not Friday, my bad. Saturday could be a bit of a surprise. Either severe weather's focused up here into Kansas and Missouri with just, an isolated severe weather threat, or we get a full-fledged MCS right just barely northeast of that low pressure in central Kansas into northern Oklahoma, and that ends up verifying the SPC's 30% tornado, or 30% severe risk, almost said tornado, 30% enhanced risk for severe weather. So Saturday could be a bit of a surprise damaging wind threat. But again, that's definitely a big if. Definitely a big if there on Saturday. Again, pretty surprised SPC pulled that trigger on the 30%, but sometimes it's just better to recognize the pattern and just see what's going to happen there. If the SPC's right, they're going to be one of the first things to hint at that severe weather, potential going into Saturday. Because like I said, our models haven't been very consistent or very good. Our CSU and SSL, they haven't really been that big of a signal for Saturday. And then we move into Sunday. That's this day right here. Big time low pressure, Sunday evening. That day, we'll have to see, man. I don't know what to think about it, I honestly don't know what to think about it. The ceiling, very high, obviously. Ceiling reminds me similar, the high risk in 2024 in Oklahoma that underperformed considerably. This reminds me greatly of that high risk for severe weather. But man, do you ever have a lot of bust factors in this one? I think this, if this held till the day one outlook, I don't think they would end up pulling anything higher than a moderate. They may barely even pull that. Ouch. They may barely even, oh my goodness, they may even barely pull that. Just keep the enhanced risk. Can I get a different sounding here? Hold on. Let's go back to Saturday. Actually, let's go back to Thursday. That didn't look good. Sunday didn't even look that good. Hold on. Interesting. Actually, not that bad comparing the two. I want to get another sounding further to the south. Go on Sunday. Let's see. Is the 12Z? Yeah. Let me use the 12Z. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the 12Z. So we have the 18Z on Sunday. 18Z, 12Z. Number one thing I'm looking at here. Dew points. I'm looking at that dry air beneath the 700 millibar and wondering if that could inhibit updrafts from sustaining or even firing in the first place. I could tell you this. Sunday, once again, very high potential. Obviously, the ceiling on Sunday is a high risk. But the bust factors here, there's a lot of them. Dryline could just simply not initiate. There's a chance that, you end up with too high of temperatures, too low of dew points, although I think moisture isn't the biggest concern. There's a chance you've got too much dry air in the lower levels to near the surface. There's a chance for morning convection. According to the GFS, morning convection could help wipe out that warm sector here. Both the 12Z and the 18Z GFS has that. So, I mean, like I said, high ceiling, very low floor. Very, very low floor, to the point where we barely even get rain showers on Sunday. So, 50-50 on that. Definitely want to be weather aware. I'm just not extraordinarily confident in that. Not very, very confident in that. Morning convection would help temps remain low enough, Jake, but here's the problem. Morning convection completely wipes out the entire central portion of your warm sector here. Look at that. I mean, you go from like 3,000 instability to legit 0. Like right in here, look at this. You go from 3,800 cape, and then look right in about the same area. You go down to like 300, maybe 50. So, yes, if it's a light morning convection. If it's light morning convection, yes. But if it's moderate convection, like a full-fledged line, very, very, very bad for storms. And honestly, morning convection, not even that big of a signal here on the GFS. Let's zoom into that. Yeah, not even really a huge signal for morning convection. Ooh, some of these definitely a big signal, but it just depends because it seems like a few of them, like maybe the 12Z attempts to 1812Z GFS kind of attempts to keep that a little bit further to the east. See how like that afternoon convection, it's wiping out a little bit further to the northeast of where that dry line would set up. So you still get morning convection, but afternoon convection is not much of a problem. So I don't know. I don't know, man. This is definitely a tricky one, you know. Definitely a day where we're just gonna have to wait and see if cams ever initiate on it. I think a 30% is perfectly fine at this point. But you know, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty on if storms are going to fire. They're definitely thinking, you know, global model runs are dead wrong on this for Sunday. The thing is, that's not 2025 anymore, right? You know, high-end environment where global models don't initiate 100 hours out doesn't mean that storms are going to initiate day of. In 2025, we have a high-end environment and a conditional risk, and, you know, 8 out of 10 times the conditional risk would end up verifying as a significant tornado threat in 2025. Like we were very much verifying well over half of those conditional risks. 2026, yeah, no, nope, nope, not 2026, man, not 2026. Very few conditional risks have actually verified in 2026. And then Monday rolls around, and that's the day where I've got all eyes on, man. I've got all eyes on. You've got a negatively tilted trough with potentially over 70 knot mid-level jet stream. You've got a lower level jet over 40 knots. You've got well over 2,000 instability across your main open warm sector. You have widespread mid 60s to even mid 70 dew points. I really don't know why Monday is not 30%. If any of these days here on the SPC outlooks deserve a 30%, it would by far not even close be Monday. I mean, somehow Saturday has an enhanced risk for severe weather, but Monday, which is arguably one of the most impressive signals that we've had this year, 100 hours out, doesn't have an enhanced risk for severe weather on their day 6 outlook. So not really sure why they don't have that 30% highlighted. I mean, this is like your classic widespread significant severe weather signal, like where we're talking about widespread tornado potential across this entire open warm sector here, widespread damaging winds, widespread large hail. Everything would just be very widespread and pretty significant if this were to come to fruition. And the GFS has been very consistent on that. The Euro is right there with it. And I have been noting the Canadian. You know, the Canadian is out on a limb here, but the Canadian does have a considerably less significant scenario for severe weather. And that's because your trough is considerably slower on the Canadian. So I would monitor the Canadian to see if maybe the Canadian's on something here. Maybe the Canadian's trying to sniff this out and kind of show you, you know, Monday's not as big as we think, but I doubt it. It's the Canadian, you know. I don't really like the Canadian main model, but I do like the Canadian high-res model, which is what you see here. This is the high-res, which only goes out 84 hours. It's like the NAM. Let's take a look at the NAM. Speaking of the NAM, take a look at that. Let's go all the way out. Golly. Anybody calling a negatively tilted trough? Why is bro negative in California? You know, that's not what you want, to be honest with you. You don't really want to see a negative trough as it's moving into the Four Corners area, because the Rockies can shred that apart. The Rockies can absolutely demolish that trough. So you really want it to be a positively tilted trough and then swing negative as it passes the Rockies. So you want it to be positive like this, positive, neutral, and then once it passes the Rockies, gets into New Mexico, that's when you want it to swing into a negatively tilted trough as it's exiting the Rockies. Yep, that thing just gets absolutely shredded. This is back to the GFS. You can see the GFS has a negatively tilted trough, and it just gets absolutely shredded across the Rockies. You still do have that belt of flow, but it gets absolutely shredded right there. The NAM only going out 84 hours out, so we can't go into Sunday. But we can at least look at Saturday here, which has, like, the weirdest setup known to mankind. Like, what? Huh? The NAM is considerably far west. See, this is a scenario where you would end up with little to no severe weather, y'all. I mean, we would be looking at a widespread, full-blown bust if that were to occur. That's why I was talking about Saturday being, you know, more uncertain than what the SPC is kind of thinking here. The SPC went really off of the 250, 500 millibar jet stream. Lower, very upper level. I believe I called 250 lower level. 250 is upper level. So they went off the upper level and the mid-level jet stream and pattern recognition to issue that 30% on Saturday, which could end up verifying nicely, or it could absolutely take a hit on their reputation. You can see here, this is a CSU Severe, which I want to take a look at. And that is in quite considerable disagreement. It's not in the biggest disagreement. It still has a slight risk for severe weather across Oklahoma, Texas. But you could see it's definitely nowhere as confident as the SPC here for Saturday. So Saturday is one of those kind of, we'll just have to wait and see which way it trends day. It could trend towards absolutely nothing firing, or it could trend towards that MCS that the SPC is thinking at the moment. But right now, that NAM model is very impressive. It's very impressive setup going into Sunday. So, I don't know. Like I said, none of these setups outside of Monday really overly impress me. I think Saturday, regardless, Saturday looks like a slop fest MCS. Maybe you could get QLCS spam tornado threat if things continue to uptrend and not look like the NAM. Thursday, we'll just start Thursday again. Thursday, main threat, Eastern Kansas. Conditional strong tornado threat. Main threat is damaging winds and large hail. Conditional threat for an intense tornado in Oklahoma. Wouldn't it be all that surprised to see them pull a SIG 2 5% in northern Oklahoma? Just in case anything fires there. Very conditional, intense tornado threat across that area. And then Friday, meh. You know, widespread damaging winds from the eastern Midwest to the Tennessee Valley to northern Dixie Alley back to the southern plains. Greatest tornado threat focused in the Texarkana, Arklatex area, if that lower level jet can increase overnight. Saturday, 50-50. You know, if it keeps trending the way it's trending on the GFS and some other models, MCS, biggest risk. You know, storms first fire, tornado threats present, large hails present, storms grow upscale, tornado threats present, embedded in that MCS, damaging wind threat goes up. And then the other scenarios where literally our trough is displaced from the open warm sector and nothing happens on Saturday. I don't really know. Honestly, I think I kind of think it would have been better to stick with a 15% on Saturday and not pull that 30% trigger at this point. Looking a bit more in depth here. Sunday, big time boomer bust. Sunday, again, reminds me of the high risk in 2024, where we underperformed considerably. You had a high echelon environment, but storms fired clustered and never were able to go discrete. So Sunday, literally boomer bust. We could be talking about a complete and utter bust where literally nothing fires, or we could be talking about a high risk caliber event on Sunday where we end up with the potential for multiple intense tornadoes if discrete storms fire on that dry line. Sunday is almost as good as it gets when it comes to a boomer bust scenario. Almost as good as it gets when it comes to boomer bust, because your floor is so low, but your ceiling is high. Then we have Monday, which again, I think I'm most confident in. Widespread significant severe weather likely on Monday across just a large vicinity of the central U.S. Again, shocked we don't have a 30% for Monday. Tuesday, main area I'm thinking right now is Texas. That's really the only area I'm really watching for Tuesday. Wednesday, meh. It could be into Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas, or it could be in just central Texas, depending on how far north your warm sector gets on Wednesday. Thursday, another potentially high-end threat for severe weather, seeing how models are starting to, pick up on this opportunity for significant severe weather in this very large positively tilted trough. It looks like Thursday could be quite significant, but it is far out. It is exactly a week out here, or actually a little more than a week out. So very far out, but getting pretty confident in that significant threat. Matter of fact, depending on how long, if these models keep trending this way for Thursday, this is different. See, this one's different. I think the Canadian's a full outlier with freaking everything. What day is that? SPC. Wonder if we'll see a day 8. This is borderline the possibility of a day 8. That would be issued tomorrow. Borderline, we could see a day 8 slight risk. I mean, we're like right on that edge. We'll see what the 00Z Canadian has, but we might end up with a day 8 slight risk for severe weather out here from like Texas and Arkansas into Mississippi, Alabama. I don't know how far north or east that would go because of uncertainty, but at least in that general area. Then after that, we could continue with the threat of severe weather into the first week of May. But then once you go beyond that, looking at the supercell composite, May 2nd, garbage, 3rd, 4th. I mean, we're looking at... That's got to be a glitch. That has got to be a glitch. Like, what? I'm calling a glitch on that one. I don't know about y'all, but I'm calling a glitch on that one. I've never seen a signal of severe weather like that from the GFS ensembles 318 hours out. I'm calling a glitch on that. Let's go to the 06Z, which is, as you can see, clear glitch. But May, it doesn't look horrible. I think some people are starting to downplay May a little bit more than we should because, honestly, I think it's starting to look like there's a chance that May actually isn't going to end up being very well below average. We'll have to see once we get closer, but at least the first week of May right now looks good. Maybe the middle and end of May doesn't look great, but we'll have to see how that looks when we get there. But right now, first week of May looks solid. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look bad. I think I might be dead wrong with that tornado season forecast. I think we actually may be looking at a pretty good above average year for tornadoes if we keep going this direction. Even though the season, it was a little bit slower start, but once we got into like mid-March, things started going crazy. From mid-March all the way till still now, it's really never stopped being that crazy. We had that full week break from severe weather. in the last few days of March into the beginning of April, but you know, that was just allowing some time for the atmosphere to recover. You know, that's the thing about weather, severe weather. We've gone over this before. Whenever you got this extended break of severe weather, you just got this dominant high pressure sitting over the US. All that's doing is it's allowing for more instability, more moisture, better ingredients, and then eventually something's got to push that high pressure out of the way. So whenever that trough swings into that atmosphere that's been building for a week or two straight, you're going to get something big. And that's what happened on April, that full week stretch where you're dealing with severe weather potential there last week. And obviously, April 17th went absolutely mayhem, being the biggest outbreak of the year. And, we entered a little bit of an inactive stretch here where we've had this dominant high pressure chilling over the central and southeastern U.S. for, a little while. Not that long, not but 3-4 days or so. It hasn't been extraordinarily long where we've had this high pressure sitting here. And then this trough's going to pull it out of the way on Thursday, make room for maybe the big trough going into Sunday and Monday. April was much more active than March. March was pretty active. March was quite well above average, and I think April's going to end up being what am I talking about? April already is above average, so I will. I'll gladly admit that my forecast for this tornado season for April was quite garbage. Yeah, it wasn't horrific, but if you go back to it, I actually highlighted an area of below average tornado activity in this area where we ended up with the biggest outbreak of the year. So, you know, um, didn't do the best for April, but I called April to be average to slightly below average, and it's probably going to be pretty well above average. And then May, we'll see how May goes, but at least I was right for March. I'll take that. I was quite dead on for March. I predicted March very well. You win some, you lose some, You win some, you lose some. But March I predicted pretty well. Dixie Alley was way below average. Well, here's the thing. Dixie Alley ain't done. Dixie Alley's waking up in April. Yeah, Dixie Alley's waking up here on Monday. Well, I don't know. Maybe we might be a little too far north, but I could tell you for sure, Dixie Alley should wake up towards the last day or two of April and the first day or so of May. This big trough should be a problem for Dixie Alley. Should be. That would be roughly April 30th. April 27th, it's definitely trended more north for you guys, which is really, really good because I know there's a lot of storm anxiety going around for April 27th. We've kind of pulled back a little bit further to the north. Still, you'll be at risk for tornadoes. This whole area should be at risk for severe weather here, including tornadoes on April 27th. But the primary area that I'm most interested in right now is from like central Illinois, southeastern Missouri, northeast Arkansas, into western Tennessee and western Kentucky. Not really much of Alabama. If anywhere in Alabama, it'd be extreme northwest Alabama. But yeah, and then I want to show you guys this chart. This is my favorite chart. Y'all know I love this thing. I use it so much. GFS daily sum of supercell composite in continental US. What you got here? Sunday, April 26th being the biggest signal for severe weather here on that solid black line and that dotted black line. So, like I said, Sunday, probably going to be equal to, maybe a little bit better of an environment compared to Monday. But the question is, does anything actually fire? So that's why I do think, Sunday has a high ceiling, very high ceiling, but also a low floor. So we got Thursday, which is right here. Not that big of a signal, honestly. Not a big signal tomorrow for a notable environment, but still we could have a good environment there in Oklahoma. Roughly around 6 o'clock, that could end up initiating a supercell. We could see a strong to intense tornado threat there possible. If if storms fire. And then we just go up from there. You know, Friday, if a lower level jet starts to increase, Friday could be a pretty good day for a few isolated tornadoes. Maybe a brief strong tornado, but that strong tornado threat on Friday looks pretty low. Saturday, just going to keep on climbing. Saturday, pretty good threat as long as stuff actually initiates on Saturday. It just depends on your trough. If your trough is slow, nothing's going to happen on Saturday. If your trough is what we're expecting, it's going to be an MCS wind bag with embedded tornadoes. Sunday, conditional risk along the dry line, but regardless, I think we'll have a tornado threat on Sunday, at least in eastern Kansas, if not big time tornado threat in eastern Oklahoma along that dry line. Monday, just as high of a threat on Sunday. However, Monday will most definitely initiate for significant severe weather, being a very strong cold front. And then you start going down from there. Monday, Tuesday, maybe watching Central Texas. Wednesday, watching Central Texas into Oklahoma. Thursday, that's going to be a day that we watch. And you could see the missed timing, right? Thursday into Friday next week. That's just one of those days. Either the 30th is the big day for Dixie Alley or the 1st is big day for Dixie Alley. And then from there on out, after that, once you hit May 1st, everything goes haywire. Everything's all over the place. There's no consistency. So definitely don't look past May 1st right now. This is the time frame that you need to be focused on right now, from tomorrow all the way till May 1st. We've got 2 reports out here, one in Columbus of a wall cloud, and then one in here 27 minutes ago of a land spout. That would put it roughly... this is already a confirmed land spout. 5:23 p.m. Observed land spout. This is already on the charts. It's already a confirmed land spout, so no need to debate. It is a land spout, and definitely was a tornado there in northeastern Illinois. And then we also have one, apparently chat's also saying tornado here. This one a little bit more iffy on this one, Not as valid of a report here. 8 minutes ago. 6:44. It would have to be maybe on the boundary. It looks like maybe a little bit of a boundary right there. I wouldn't say it's impossible. There is a boundary right there. So you never know. There could have been. That's just a little bit less reliable of a report because there's no photos said there, and it's not from, the National Weather Service hasn't observed that yet. And they also, it's not emergency management either. Whereas this one, if you go back to this one in Illinois, or is it in Indiana? No, that's in Illinois. You could see National Weather Service local storm reports. They've already verified it. Emergency management, of course, already verified it. Numerous pictures and videos of a land spout. Multiple pictures, multiple witnesses. Likely lasted about 4 minutes. Very detailed, very obvious, clear report there that you can easily confirm. This one, not so much. Maybe could have happened off of the boundary, but we'll just have to see if that chaser got any photos of it, and if they did, then that's obviously more credible. For Monday, St. Louis. Oh yeah, for sure, St. Louis. Yeah, definitely. But don't, you're probably in the St. Louis area. That's why you're saying that. But just heads up, don't focus just on St. Louis because it's a much broader picture. We're not looking at just St. Louis under the gun for severe weather on Monday. We're looking at that entire area. I think has a good chance of significant severe weather up until you get to the Appalachians. But yeah, I think for sure St. Louis needs to be watching Monday. Probably St. Louis. This is probably your biggest threat for severe weather in a very long time. Of course, you did have that one random storm that was hanging on April 17th, about five days ago or so. But this looks like your first legitimate widespread severe threat that could very easily affect much of eastern Missouri. So, like I said, I expect I will be shocked if they don't. I expect that slight risk will grow all the way up into Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. Not sure how far north. It might go into central Iowa, it might go into northern Illinois, just generally north, definitely into St. Louis. And then I would still, again, I would be pretty shocked if we don't get a 30% like right in here. I would be pretty shocked. And that 30% actually could go even up into St. Louis too. But that's generally, I would generally expect that slight risk from the SPC, where we have that big slight risk and then a bullseye right in the middle of it. Draw that a little bit better. This is what I'd expect for the SPC outlook here on day 6 going into day 5. And then, like I said, I think a 30% somewhere from like the border of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama into Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, and Missouri. There you go. Good old bullseye right there. Dead center bullseye of that 30%. That's what I'm kind of thinking there for Monday. All right, let's just pull a sounding here, you know. Let's go back to the 12Z, pull a sounding here in Tennessee. And let's go back to the 18Z, pull a sounding in eastern Arkansas. Wow. It is not often you see it is not very many threats you have that many analogs. Holy crap. That is not common at all. Not often you see that many analogs for a severe weather event. So, yeah, we're definitely looking at big time high-end ceiling here for Monday if it holds. That is very uncommon. And then on the 12Z, which was a downtrend on the GFS, you still have those analogs full pack there. 67% chance of a tornado. Of course that number. This one has 66, this one has 67. That dumb old number, bro. Wow. So, like I said, Monday's got my interest the most. But all right, I think that's about it for my discussion here. So, I mean, if you guys have any last minute questions, go ahead and shoot them in the chat. Hello, Otter. Glad to see you in here. I'm pretty sure you were in here before, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you were chatting just earlier, but glad to see you in here. Hello. Yeah, it's already been a whole hour, believe it or not. It can change TRG. That's right. It can uptrend even more. You got to give it the equal chance. You know, when you say it can change, yeah, it can downtrend, but you bet your bottom dollar it can uptrend too. I think Nashville will get placed under 30% for Monday. Not at the moment, but I do think you should be placed under a slight risk. But I don't think you need to, I don't think you'll be under that 30% yet, unless the trough trends quicker, and then yeah. Long range funny, Euro. Ha, bowling ball trough on like the last frame. That would be the perfect May setup, man, right there. Short wave in front, May 4th, delivers 2-3 days of severe weather. Bowling ball trough delivers 4 or 5 days of severe weather there. Yeah, capping shouldn't be an issue on Monday, but capping will definitely be an issue on Sunday. It definitely could be a problem for Sunday. Yeah, definitely a live stream tomorrow. Might be a briefing. It might be a briefing. I don't think tomorrow is going to require me to sit here for multiple hours of coverage. So I'll probably do a briefing early. Tomorrow's what? Friday? It's Thursday. I'll probably do a briefing early. You know, RRFSA has severe storms sparking up at 3. So we'll probably be live from like 3 to 4, 3 to like 4:15 or something. I know I have something to do tomorrow afternoon, so just like roughly about 3:30 to 4:30, we'll plan a live stream tomorrow. 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern, I'll be live. And then if things go crazy, we'll start up and do a big coverage stream too if things start getting out of control. If it's needed. And then Friday we'll probably do the same, you know, brief 1-2 hour briefing on Friday. Saturday is iffy. Sunday will probably be live a long time. I'd have to imagine unless things downtrend drastically, Sunday will probably be the first day where we're live for a bunch of hours, and then Monday will probably be live for a good chunk of the day. So we're gonna split these up. Not all of these days are gonna be full 8+ hour coverages here, you know. This ain't 2025 TRG where he's gonna sit here for 11, 12 hours here on a slight risk day like tomorrow. Even if tomorrow goes enhanced, which it probably will for hail, I think it should be enhanced for hail already. I'm not gonna sit there for 8+ hours, but we'll probably do an hour, maybe 2 live stream tomorrow, and then if it's needed, we'll head back on and do coverage if the dry line initiates in Oklahoma. Mid-Atlantic severe weather instead of Midwest. I could do with another 1 or 2 severe risks. Slight risks are greater for severe weather going towards the end of April into May, but I like it. I like it like this where it's not frequent severe weather, but golly, we need some rain, man. I think we've gotten like 2 minutes of drizzle of rain in the last 3 days, and it's pretty much just been no rain for the last almost 3 weeks now. High risk for Monday, definitely on the table. Same goes for Sunday. Sunday, definitely high risk caliber, but easily could be a type of day where nothing happens. But like I said, Sunday, very much reminiscent of mid-May 2024, we had a high risk. Monday, I think Monday should already be enhanced, and I think there's a very high chance we'll see a moderate on Monday. So, yeah, as long as things hold or keep uptrending. But all right, that's going to be it. I appreciate the mods for Mod and Chat and everybody for being here. I'll see you guys around 3:30 Eastern tomorrow for another live stream. We'll be live for an hour or 2 tomorrow. I appreciate you guys being here. All the mods for Mod and Chat. Sunday night, I would be watching Eastern Kansas, Western Missouri is the main threat Sunday night, but also want to watch Eastern Oklahoma for that conditional high-end tornado threat. We'll see if anything fires, but definitely Sunday looks pretty impressive as long as storms fire on that dry line. But all right, I will catch you guys in tomorrow's live stream at about 3:30 Eastern. Stay safe, watch the severe weather. Thank you, mods, for Mod and Chat. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday night. And yeah, thank you for watching. That's about it. Goodbye. Man, I'm like Legacy. I'm 5 seconds over. I didn't time it right, so might as well go a little bit longer. 5 more seconds. Have a great rest of your Wednesday night. Goodbye.